All right, and we are recording. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of WrestleShadow. And before we begin, actually, I just want to warn our viewers that YouTube might actually take down this video because we are in big trouble. Big trouble, and big trouble. Ben Bishop is here. Did you like the segue?
I can't even fit in the screen, man. Look at that. You got to get bigger screen at Sports Shadow. What's the budget looking like to get the screen a little bit bigger? You tell me. Above your pay grade? Above your pay? You don't know.
I mean, you'd have to talk to Abhishek about it. I'll talk to him later.
Yeah, bigger screen for me, man. Again, my shoulders don't fit. Come on.
Man, I mean, I'm going to get to a question about your size because, of course, how can I not, right? You're one of the biggest guys out there. But before that, Ben, when I was researching about doing this interview, there's so many things that I found quite unconventional about you. One of them being your transition from Division One basketball, which you played for 4 years, I think, and then to professional wrestling. Like, how did that transition happen? I know that it's actually okay, it's not unconventional in the sense that a lot of athletes, pro wrestlers have played some sport, but probably not at the level that you did.
Yeah. No, there's actually, I think the only two active pro wrestlers right now who played Division One, I'll say made it to the NCAA tournament are me and Lash Legend. We're the only two active professional wrestlers who have played Division One and made it to the NCAA tournament. And I did it twice. I think she did it about 3 or 4 times. But yeah, I've always been a wrestling fan, Prem. So I've always loved wrestling since I was a kid. I started watching it around like 98, and fell in love with guys like, the Kevin Nashes of the world, the Psycho Sids, Tests, Undertaker, Kane, the bigger guys. I was always a big kid. So, but I kind of knew, like, I always would go. I'd always go outside on like my trampoline, and I'd always like do the moves, and I'd always kind of use my imagination and make up scenarios in my head and all that, and it was so much fun. But I kind of knew, like, where's wrestling going to really take me? I didn't know that, so I got into basketball because I was tall and I was big. So basketball, played that my whole life, since I was 9 years old, all the way through college. And AAU, travel teams. I went to a prep school in Massachusetts for basketball, then obviously went to University of Vermont, where then, my career with basketball was done. And then kind of real life hit me. I was like, now what do I do? I've been an athlete my whole life, and I'm not sure exactly like what to do from here. And I actually played a little bit of Australian football, not in Australia, but here in the States. It was kind of a glorified men's league. And it was fun. It was a blast. I really made some cool connections. I played that for about 3 years. And then that ended because I was like, man, I can't keep up with all this running. So my knees were screaming. But I always wanted to do something. I always wanted something else to do. And, funny enough, you interviewed Ellsworth. Ellsworth is actually my trainer. I don't know if he told you that, but he trained me. And I just went to a show one day, and I ran into Gilbert, who's a Maryland guy, just like Ellsworth. He was at the show. He asked me, "Are you a wrestler?" I said, "No." He said, "Do you want to be?" I said, "Sure." And he introduced me to Ellsworth. And the next day I started training. And that was a little over 6 years ago. So it's been a wild ride, man. It's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed every second of it. It's been a dream of mine to do this. I always said, that'd be amazing just to be involved in wrestling. Then when I got involved in wrestling, I'm like, man, I just can't wait to have at least one match. I just want to have one match. And, from there, it's like, oh, I'd love to get to work a match on TV. Then I did that. So the goals keep increasing, and things keep going in the right direction. And I've been very, very fortunate to have all the opportunities that I've had.
Mm-hmm. And the one thing that I've noticed, like growing up watching pro wrestling, is that guys who are your size, and I mean, there's a fair few of them that we see in pro wrestling, but those guys generally go with the giant monster archetype, whereas the personality that I see from your character, the vibe is more anti-hero, charismatic, witty. So is that what's the story behind that?
Yeah, that's a great observation from you, and that's what I wanted when I started wrestling. I said, like, I want to do this, but I don't want to be just like the brooding big monster. And this is no offense to guys like the Kanes and the Undertakers of the world, because they did an outstanding job, and they're two of the greatest big men of all time. And they made it work. I just couldn't see myself doing that. I didn't see myself wearing a mask. I didn't see myself just being the silent monster type. I've always had a fun, outgoing personality, and I always thought that the best characters in wrestling are really just, you know, your personality turned up to 11. So I always loved like the cheesy 80s movies, like the John Carpenter movies, especially where I got my name from is Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah.
I loved that movie. I thought Jack Burton was an awesome character. I think him being kind of the anti-hero, like you said, charismatic, witty, type character in that movie is so endearing. And it can also be a good guy or a bad guy. It just depends on how you kind of see Jack Burton. And I was like, you know what? I think that fits me more, and I think people will see me in a more genuine light if I am this type of character instead of being the big monster. I've tried it. I've tried to do the big monster character. I worked for Juggalo Championship Wrestling for a few shows in 2024, and it was a cool experience. And I wish nothing but the best for JCW. They got some cool stuff going on. They got some great wrestlers there. It just wasn't my vibe, and the character wasn't really my vibe. I didn't like it very much. And I just was like, I couldn't feel like I'd give it my all because it didn't fit me. So I thought having a character that's more like my real personality, just, you know, exaggerated a bit, would endear more to wrestling fans and would get me more opportunities.
You also dipped your toes in content creation, I think, in 2023, and you said that you were open about the burnout that you were feeling, and you started creating content, which obviously blew up. And I personally am also kind of in a phase like that where I've been doing something for a while, and I feel like I need a bit of change. There's some transition that's needed, but I tell you what, like when you've done something, when your entire background is in a particular stream, to actually go out there and try out something else, which I'm sure was the case for you too. It can sometimes feel scary. So talk to me about that phase. How was that emotionally? Was it difficult for you during that time?
Yeah, I was just because here's the thing, Prem, is that like ever since I started, everybody would tell me like, "Oh, look at your size, look how big you are. Look, you're gonna get signed. Vince is gonna love you. They're gonna sign you. Oh, if WWE doesn't work out, AEW will pick you up. If AEW doesn't work out, TNA will pick you up. It's like you're gonna get signed." And I've heard that. I heard that for the first few years I was wrestling, and I was just like, it's a compliment. I'm not, the person saying it means well, but it's also at the same time, it's kind of feels insulting because it's like, well, it's not happening. So what the hell? Like, what am I doing then? What do I have to do? So I really, I kind of got to the point where I said, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe wrestling is maybe I'm just going to, quit. I feel like I'm giving a lot to it and I'm not really getting what I wanted out of it. And, not saying that's fair. Like, I'm not saying that's unfair because a lot of people put a lot into it and don't get a lot out of it. So I just was kind of like, maybe it's just not my thing. And then I talked to a few people, Sam Adonis being one of them, who reached out to me and kind of gave me a little bit of motivation to try something new. He didn't tell me exactly but he's like, you have something there, and I just think something's missing, and I think you could do a lot more. You seem really entertaining. You seem like you're just an athletic big guy. Like you could do something. So I just started racking my brain. I started working with this guy, Nick Buono. He used to work for Barstool Sports. We did a podcast together called the Meat Pop Express for a bit. And we talked about continuing to put content out. And I was like, what am I going to do for content? I don't know what I wanted. And I thought I would always make these jokes, especially with Ellsworth, when we're driving in the car, we would make jokes about wrestling. We'd poke fun at wrestling and, all the silliness around wrestling. And I was like, you know what, maybe I just try to put this in video form and try to and I did it really for myself. It was cathartic to me. It was almost therapeutic where I'm like, I have an outlet now where I can poke fun at the silliness of this industry and everything that goes along with it. Because it is at the end, when you boil it down, it's a carny industry. It's a circus. It's very almost archaic sometimes in how things are run. So I just thought, maybe it'd be funny. Maybe people will relate to it. And I did it for a while, and the views were okay. I had a few buddies reaching out, being like, "Oh my god, this is so funny, this is great." And no, but it wasn't really taking off. It was 1,000, 2,000 views at a time at the most. And I was like, okay, that's good for now. Like I'm feel like I'm doing pretty good. And then I started making more and started catching more fire, and that's how I got the AEW opportunity to work on Rampage against Roderick Strong. And then after that, things really started blowing up. And then now I get people all the time. I have people that I looked up to, in wrestling. I have people I watch on TV who are reaching out saying, I love this stuff. Like, this is so good. And, I got WrestleCade coming up, the convention this weekend. I know a bunch of people going, so it'll be good to connect with them and, talk with them, and people that I know watch my content because I see them liking it. I see them following me. I see all that type of stuff. And it's just cool because these are people on TV. So it's like now I feel like I've become like a quote unquote like name in wrestling, in the niche industry that is professional wrestling, without having any TV. And sometimes, I'm always somebody, I like to stay humble. I like to stay modest. I don't, not talk, obviously the Big Trouble character, but myself, actually Ben, real life Ben. I like to stay modest, stay humble, but also, what we have to do, and this is everybody, this isn't just me, what we have to do is make sure that we celebrate the little wins, and we celebrate when we do things, because when we do things that we are proud of. And building up my brand from scratch, like I didn't have any big company backing me. I didn't have big companies retweeting my stuff. WWE, TNA, AEW, Ring of Honor, NWA, MLW, they weren't retweeting anything of mine or commenting anything or doing it, engaging with me at all. So my whole brand was really just built up from the ground up. So that, to this day, I'm very proud of myself for that, because it's tough. It's tough to find a niche. It's tough to find something that will set you apart. I already had the height that sets me apart, and the size. But in 2025 professional wrestling, you need more. And that's when I decided, you got to figure out what else I got to figure out what else I can do. And I did. So.
Is it the power of the internet then that got you a WWE tryout this year? That was much talked about, and I think, if I'm not wrong, you had a tryout a few years back as well, right? With WWE. So what was the 2025 tryout like, and how was it different from the first one you did?
Yeah, so the first one was right in like the height of COVID, so it was February 2021, and they brought in about 12 of us. 5 quit. Well, I think 2 failed the COVID test and 3 quit. So within the first 10 minutes, there were only 7 of us. And for 2 days, they ran us ragged. So they really blew us up. We were doing some crazy drills and nonstop for 3 hours at a time, had an hour break, another 3 hours, strength and conditioning session, came back the next day, had a match, then another 3-hour session. So it was tough. It was really hard. And yeah, I kind of knew I wasn't really ready in 2021 when they called me, or they sent me an email this time around, back then, and they just said, hey, we're not interested this time. And I wasn't surprised. I was kind of just like, yeah, I get it. I know I have a lot more work to do, and I just wasn't ready. So when I found out this time, I was contacted by Gabe Sapolsky, who's the scout in North America, for WWE, independent wrestling scout. And I've been in contact with him since September of 2024. And he told me kind of around March, he's like, I think I'm going to try to get you the SummerSlam tryout because of social media. Yeah, my size is one thing and my ability is one thing, but the way I set myself apart is that I'm able to, create engagement on social media, which now is a huge deal. So when I found out at the end of May, that I was going to have the tryout at the end of July, I just went, balls to the wall, man. I was, doing everything I could in the gym, getting in the best shape possible. Cardio, trying to keep my cardio as high as it possibly can go. Cause I didn't want it to end up, blown up like I was in the first tryout. So, this tryout, and it was much different. There were 51 people. There were about 34 athletes and 17 wrestlers. Much bigger, much better facility in New Jersey Institute of Technology. Beautiful, beautiful facility. The first one was at the Performance Center, but not the real Performance Center. It was in a back room of the Performance Center, which just had 2 random rings. But this was in a beautiful facility in New Jersey, in Newark, New Jersey, where they were running SummerSlam at the Meadowlands later that week. They had 4 rings set up. They had all the bells and whistles. They had a big stage. It was incredible. And It wasn't, well, I'm not going to say it was easy, but it definitely was not as physically demanding as the first tryout was. I also felt like I was a little bit more prepared for this tryout. And I thought it went well. You know, I had a lot of people come up to me afterward and just say like, "Oh, you're a shoo-in. Like, you know, you did great." I hadn't had people from WWE saying that. Like, your promo was great, your in-ring work was great, you really stood out. You know, I've had people say that to me, and unfortunately, you know, a month later, I got the call, and I don't blame this man at all. Gabe Spolsky called me. And I could tell he felt bad because I think he thought like it was going to work out, and you know, he was extremely kind. He was extremely empathetic about it. But it is what it is. You know, I was bummed for a few days. I went through some feelings, and because I really thought I did the best I could. But I ended up telling myself, you know, you did what you could, and now it's time to kind of show them that you can be a commodity and maybe take a different route. Maybe that's just not the route for me at this time, and see what I can make happen. You know, I'm still having fun. I'm still enjoying it. And just because one company said no doesn't mean I'm going to just pack it up and say, you know, I'm done, you know, because I've really been enjoying independent wrestling, enjoying the connections I make, enjoying the relationships I'm building. So there's a lot more for me. And so it's not going to, just being told no by WWE right now isn't the be all end all.
Mhm. You know, Ben, you mentioned how grueling the WWE tryout was, particularly the first time, because you probably weren't as well prepared as you were in
Mhm.
2025. Talk to me about what's your fitness regimen like, and not just
Mhm.
yourself, but as a pro wrestler, because I also have a follow-up question with this, but I'm very fascinated because, you know, when I look at the likes of, let's say, you know, Brock Lesnar, who's been at it for so many years, and he's a big guy too. I mean, probably not as big as you, but he's quite big. But his kind of agility, to have that at his age as well, right? It's not easy. So, what's the fitness regimen like
Yeah.
for pro wrestlers?
The thing that works for guys that, you know, you've had it's easier for me having an athletic background and kind of knowing how to move my body in space. So my body has been accustomed to like doing that. And when I played basketball, I wasn't one of the most agile big men, but I get into wrestling, I'm one of the most agile big men in wrestling because it's just different, right? Like my training regimen now, I do train like an athlete, but also with wrestling, you need to train like a bodybuilder too. So you got to kind of put both together. You can't just do the training I did for basketball, because that's very high cardio. And then if you do way too much cardio, you start losing muscle, and you know, the muscle isn't built as much because that's where it's taking the energy from. So, so I try to do a good amount of high intensity cardio. I try to get in at least 4 or 5 days a week. I'll do like 100 burpees through my workout and just try to, because that's really the best thing to do if you're not in a ring. It's because getting up and getting down is what blows us up the most. So if you can get through a bunch of burpees and doing that, that works out great. My lifting consists of about 45 minutes to 50 minutes of a lifting session. I do focus on lifting not super heavy. It's kind of moderately heavy because, again, I don't need to be the strongest guy in the world. I need to have an aesthetic, and that's it. It's like I'm training to have an aesthetic and look good with my shirt off, really. But then when it comes to cardio, which is extremely important, and unfortunately a lot of big guys, it goes by the wayside a lot. I try to pride myself on that. I do a lot of Stairmaster. I do a lot of like jump roping. I try to mix it up because I get bored a lot with cardio. So I try to do different things to keep challenging myself. But just stuff that keeps me bouncing, jumping, you know, just to keep the body continually in motion, and continually moving at a fast pace, because that's another thing that will set me apart, is that I'm more agile than many big men in wrestling. So I'm trying to keep that as long as I can.
And what about nutrition? Because that's probably 70 or 80% of it,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Of for any fitness. If you have to live a fit lifestyle, then you got to be eating right, and particularly for wrestlers and athletes, because okay, I understand that at the very top level, it's not easy, but it's easier because you can afford to get those
Exactly.
handed to you, but uh, when you're actually climbing up the ladder, it's
Yeah.
difficult, right, to maintain everything.
Yeah. You gotta eat. I always say I eat pretty boring. So I always say that, and that's really how it has to go. And I learned from Caesar Bononi, who I worked with um, last year, and he really kind of gave me great foundation for eating, because I always thought I ate pretty clean until I started working with him, and I learned a lot more about eating. And Caesar is awesome. He's helped a lot of wrestlers get in great shape. He has a great personalized plan, and he gave me a really good idea of what to do. So like with me, it's simple, man. It's like eggs, egg whites, like simple carbs, where it's like just like tortilla wraps or something, like the carb balance.
Broccoli, rice, and chicken
Yeah, like
breast.
stuff like that. Yeah, then I'll, I should add in a little bit more vegetables. I do a pretty bad job at that. But yeah, spinach, broccoli. I try to do like, grilled chicken at lunch, and then night it's like just rice and ground beef. So it's very, like, a lot of my, like I said, it's boring. So it's like I kind of eat the same stuff every day, but that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do if you want to be at that level. I'm 35 now, so I don't have the metabolism of a 22-year-old where I can just go and have McDonald's 3 times a week and be fine, because I'll just burn it off. I got to be cognizant of it. I'll have one cheat meal and I'll feel it for the next 2 days. Unfortunately, that's just where we're at now. But so I try to really make sure that I'm on top of my nutrition, especially, if I have shows coming up. I like keeping busy, because that one reason for that is because I know I have to keep eating healthy. I can't afford a cheat day if I have like a bunch of weeks worth of shows coming up. So, nutrition's really important, and I've really dialed that in over the past year. And like I do at this point, being 35 years old, I look better than I did when I was 28, 29, 30. So, it can happen. I think age is just a number. I think people get too wrapped up in it. It's not the days of like the 80s and the 90s where we're like boozing every night and drinking and doing all that stuff. So it's not like we're looking older than we should. But it's been it's really, again, another like small win, where I never thought I'd be a guy that has abs, ever in my life. I'm like, that's never going to happen. And, I do, because I've ramped up the training, ramped up the eating. It's eating healthy. I'm not going to say I am, the healthiest eater and I stick to something, perfect. I give myself, I'm like 85-15, 85% of the time I'm eating really clean. 15% of the time I might have a few snacks or something, and because I'm human at the same time. So, but yeah, that's, nutrition, working out. I tell wrestlers all the time, like, and they ask for advice, like, you just control what you can control, and you can control that. Like, you control what your body looks like. You might not be able to control if you're going to get an opportunity, but you can control that you're in good shape and that you look like you're ready to be on TV. And it's not going to be embarrassing for a company to put you on TV. Control that first, and then the opportunities may or may not come, but at least, if they do come, you'll be ready.
Mm-hmm. And my follow-up question regarding that, Ben, is that one thing that is different with pro wrestling, the athletes who are into pro wrestling, than, let's say, a footballer, for example. At around your age, unless you're Cristiano Ronaldo, most athletes are wrapping up, right? Whether it's tennis, football, you look at any other, but you look at the Goldbergs of the world, the Brock Lesnar's, and this is really for the long term. And I sometimes wonder, with the kind of shape, and you can answer this question to any extent that you want.
Yeah.
But are performance enhancing drugs and things like that almost like an occupational hazard for a lot of wrestlers, particularly with age?
Yeah. You mean like using like performance enhancing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know who uses it and who doesn't. I don't really get into it. I'm open about what I do, and I take a little bit of testosterone because of my age, just a little bit to keep me at the levels I want to be at. And I do it all through a doctor. I do the blood tests. I do everything. It's not through any type of like shisty guy at the gym who just sells me something. But because it's just biology. And I tell people, some people are ashamed to say it, but I'm like, I'm not ashamed. It's just, levels drop, and that's what happens in life. And you can be the most in shape person, but your levels can drop. And I just take a little bit of testosterone once a week. And, it gets me to levels I want to be at. And that's helped me a lot too. It keeps me, more energized, able to lift and work out the way I want to work out. And keeps me in, it helps me stay in good shape. It's a little bit of a boost, because I know there's a ton of guys. I've talked to a few buddies of mine who do it as well. And they're like, 170 pounds, and I tell them how much I take, and they're like, oh, I take double that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't need a lot. Like, I'm keeping myself in good shape. I just need a little bit to keep me on the where I want to be at. So I think nowadays with like, people are more conscious about their body. They're more conscious about, substances like alcohol or drugs or anything like that. It's not happening as much. I don't see it in locker rooms at all. Like, there's nobody, guys will have a beer or two every now and then, but that's really it. Nobody's bringing in bottles or bringing in pills or anything like that.
It's much more professional now.
Much more professional. Even on the indie side, it's much more professional. And so I think that's why guys can wrestle into their mid 40s to late 40s now, like CM Punks of the world, the Randy Ortons. Like, yeah, they're getting up there, and they might not work as much, but they're still able to go out and have good matches because of medical advancements. They're taking care of their bodies. It's not like it used to be in the 80s and the 90s when you hit 35. That was kind of like, maybe you have like 2 or 3 years left and you're kind of done. It's just not like that anymore. So now I think 35 is like the new 30. It really is, and so you still have years underneath you. And I just want to keep doing it until I can watch it. I can watch a tape one day and be like, oh man, I've lost a lot. I've lost a lot of steps. Maybe I'll call it quits. When that happens, then I'll say, okay, like we can call it a day. But as of now, things have been great.
When you mentioned the indie circuit, tell me, what's it like wrestling in the indies, and particularly with some of the big wrestlers who've been in, let's say some of the bigger products, whether it's WWE, AEW. Are they sometimes when they get onto the indie circuit, are they averse to losing matches and things like that, because that it would damage their reputation in a certain sense and things like that?
It depends where they're at in their career. Some guys don't care at all. Like
Do you?
they're like, so I will say this, I don't. I've lost a ton of matches. I've lost to a lot of guys smaller than me. I always tell promoters, I don't mind it if it's someone smaller than me. I don't mind as long as we make it make sense. As long as it makes sense. I'm not having a guy that's 150 pounds pick me up over his head and slam me down, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't look good. It looks stupid. We're making it look more phony than it is. And that's one thing I just don't, I'll always put my foot down on. But again, you got to do good business with people. You can't have an ego. At the end of the day, wrestling is what it is. It's entertainment. It's fun. People are here to see a story. They're here to see people, entertain them. So you got to do what the promoter asks for, and you can have conversations. And I had one yesterday with a promoter, and I was saying, I'm not trying to book your show. I'm not trying to say I should win. I just don't want to look stupid. Like, I want to make sure nobody in this situation looks dumb. And if a guy that's half my size beats me in a minute, like, it kind of looks dumb. Like, it looks silly, especially if they just hit a move on me and it's like, well, why did that big guy lose so quickly? Like, it looks kind of stupid on that end. So I always say that, as long as it makes sense, I don't mind, because you can't have an ego. You got to understand that everyone's going to lose. We're not Goldberg. We're not coming in with undefeated streaks. A few guys in the indies, they make it their gimmick almost they can't lose, which I think is the silliest shit in the world. But the guys coming from WWE, honestly, I've had nothing but great experiences with a lot of them. Like, I mean, rattling off some of them, Matt Riddle, I've had 2 matches with on the indies. Nick Nemeth, Baron Corbin, now goes by Bishop Dyer, Matt Cardona, Brian Myers, Macklin. Like, I didn't win all those matches. I won a few of them, but I didn't like. But it's all about the experience. It's all about getting in there with guys like that. And who cares if you win? It doesn't. It's not. You're not winning any. You're not really winning anything. It's a show. So the guys that come in with egos, like, I can't win, or I can't get pinned, or I can't do this, I can't do that. It's just like, hey man, it's like, we all do it at some point. Like, it doesn't mean you're less of a man than me because you lost. Like, it's just what the story calls for. And that's how you get booked more. And I think guys who are tough to do business with are the ones who take themselves too serious, and they act like if they lose, that's a shot to their ego, when it's just like, no, man, it's just part of the show. And I'm very self-aware of what this is and what I am, and I will go out and I will do good business as long as it makes sense, and that's totally fine with me. You can't have an ego, and that's another thing I tell a lot of wrestlers is like if you come in with an ego and you come in saying like, you know, you can't lose, or you need to win, you need this, you need that you're coming off as a prima donna, and it's just not something that will get you really far in wrestling.
Yeah, and I was talking to Ellsworth last week, and he mentioned this, like The Rock says, know your role. It's
Yeah.
important to know your role in wrestling. Yeah, and Ben, finally, one last question for you.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to next?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Prem. But and I never give the best answer to this because for me, you know, I always focus on like today, right? Like I've kind of told myself that it's always about what you're doing now. What am I gonna what content will I put out today? You know, what can I do today to make myself better in the gym? You know, or whether it be, you know, if I'm watching film or I'm watching something, how can I make myself a little like 1% better? But like looking forward to stuff. I got a ton of fun stuff coming up. I got WrestleCade this weekend. So I'll get to connect with a lot of people and see maybe make some content with some people and, you know, continue to build those relationships. I love going to conventions for that reason. It's gotten me a lot of opportunities just going to conventions and talking and networking. And because, you know, people want to work with people they like. So if you build those relationships and you do that, like they're going to stick their neck out for you when an opportunity arises. And that's happened for me multiple times now. So I can't wait for that. You know, Coastal Championship Wrestling is going to start TV tapings December 8th in Florida, in Pompano Beach, Florida. So I'm part of that. So it's really exciting time for that company who's been doing outstanding things in Florida, now building out into Tennessee and Nashville. CCW is an awesome company here in the States. So excited for that. I got some more stuff coming up with Beyond Wrestling, which is one of the top indies in the country. I always love working for them. It's always been a lot of fun. And yeah, I mean, we'll just see where things go, man. You know, I like what I'm doing. I like that I have total creative control of my character and what I can do. And it's just the cards will lie where they lie, you know, and if it's meant to be that I get to WWE, then, you know, outstanding. If it's not, what I've done so far, I've been really proud of, and I've been really happy. And I've never thought in a million years when I started wrestling in 2019 that I'd even be in this position, you know, of being recognized by, you know, guys I used to look up to, being told, like Kevin Nash told me at a convention a few months ago, he's like, I love what you're doing. I think it's so good. And he's my favorite wrestler of all time. So the fact that happened is just like, you know, I could have retired then and just said, like, you know, that's amazing. So, but yeah, no, but there's still more to do, and I'm going to keep doing it until I can't. So I'm always looking forward when you ask, like, what are you looking forward to? I'm looking forward to tomorrow because, you know, you never know what's going to happen. It's wrestling. So, you know, you can get a call tomorrow and, you know, doesn't happen tomorrow, maybe the next day. If it's not the next day, maybe it's the next month. Who knows? So it's always, that keeps me excited because there's always an opportunity, something that's going to arise.
That's awesome, man. All right, Ben, this has been an excellent half hour. I really enjoyed this conversation, man.
Hey, man, thank you so much. Great questions. I appreciate all the research you did too. Not a lot of guys will do that. So that's really professional of you.
Thanks a lot, Ben, for your time.
You got it. Have a good one, Prem.